Hey everyone. For those watching this video, today I'm going to talk about and share some research and overview study on the cross-finance ecosystem from our validator, Digital Alchemist. This won't be a deep dive, but more of an overview video to capture the current state of the network. The overview will be divided into 4 sections: introduction and an analysis of the ecosystem, key advantages of the current state, as well as a forecast section. The text is presented in 2 languages for the audience's convenience, for clarity and ease of understanding. You can pause the video and read along. I won't be reading everything out loud. I'll focus only on the less obvious points. You can find all the project information on the official resources. Let's start with the introduction. Everything I say in this video is not investment advice, a recommendation to act, or a call to action. This is my personal opinion. The information presented in this video is also gathered from public sources and is available to any user. My goal here is to show the current state of the network, its prospects, and to highlight important aspects in the eyes of the audience so we understand from which angle to look at cross-finance. This video I'm recording this message for users who are interested in learning more, for our valued partners and esteemed delegates, for editors, for respected jury members, and to share a little bit about myself as well. My name is Valerie. I have been active online for approximately 8 years now, during which time I have gained a wealth of experience. I am deeply passionate about the world of cryptocurrencies, the rapidly evolving field of blockchain technology, and a wide variety of related areas and disciplines. I look forward to connecting with all of you and sharing more insights in the future. I see truly great and remarkable potential in the innovative cross-finance network, and I genuinely want to take this opportunity to share my personal vision with you in detail so that you can fully understand how you can get involved here and, of course, earn as well. At the current stage, the network is gradually and steadily moving out of the quiet, behind-the-scenes building phase, slowly rolling out its features and becoming available to the broader market. This is the perfect time to dive in, before the wider internet community and the world of Web3 find out about this groundbreaking technology. It's absolutely the best time to secure your position within the network and start taking meaningful action to benefit from this early opportunity. In short, in this video, I'm covering only the most important and essential points. No general or basic facts, just the most interesting and noteworthy things that you won't find in your very first look at the system. Let's move on to the analysis section. Let's start with the history. The company eBlockchain was officially launched in the early spring of the year 2023, and the main goal and mission of the entire company is to unite and connect traditional finance with Web3 finance. We know there's a pretty significant gap between the two, but that dividing line is gradually fading away, and CrossFi is managing to bring this important moment closer in the best possible way. We'll find out a bit later how convenient this is for users, but first, let's talk about how the CrossFi blockchain is built, because this is the most important part of the system. It's the blockchain itself. The blockchain is built on Cosmos and EVM. This is a hybrid system. Cosmos is already a well-established blockchain that operates on the delegated proof-of-stake algorithm, meaning users hold coins and delegate them to validators, and the consensus algorithm ensures the network's functionality and security. EVM stands for Ethereum Virtual Machine, the most popular programming language for which is Solidity. Because of this, EVM allows you to easily integrate any familiar protocols, services, and applications into CrossFi. So there are 2 layers, Cosmos and EVM. Our validator, Digital Alchemist, is also represented here. We are active participants in the ecosystem. We help users understand things and keep them informed. There's always something interesting with us, and our delegates are always kept in the right informational space. We've also created and continue to create a number of useful products for the ecosystem. Here's one of them shown here, the CrossFi InfoBot. You can also see the public key of our node here. This is how it looks in the Explorer. So, welcome. Let's get back to the blockchain and the key assets that the consensus runs on. There's a particular feature here. There are two native coins, MPX, also known as MinPower, and XY, and they are very closely connected to each other. MPX is a governance coin, meaning it's used for management and decision making. It has unlimited issuance. It also serves as a means of paid commission in the Cosmos part, and the point is that MPX is the only source for mining X-File. In other words, we stake MPX as validators. Here's how it works. And every 5 seconds, when a block is produced, we receive X-File, which we can claim to our balance and use as intended. The unique thing about MPX is that it's a non-liquid coin, meaning it's not traded anywhere. Not on exchanges, not on Binance, not on DEXs, nowhere. Of course, you can buy it from another user through OTC, peer-to-peer markets, and of course from the company itself. The base price is 20. That's all we need to know about MPX for now. The second, and perhaps more interesting, is X-File. This is the main asset of the network, around which everything revolves. X-File is a utility coin. Its issuance is capped at 370 million units, and the mining of X-File is also divided into 5 iterations, or 5 stages. That is, with each stage, the block reward decreases by 1 X-File per block. Right now, we are in the first period, which is already halfway through. Currently, 5 X-File are mined per block, and about 73 million X-File have already been mined so far. X-File is used for various services. It can be used as collateral, as an asset, as collateral, and also as a means of payment, which is very important, and I'll talk more about that later, as well as for paying network fees and so on. Now, let's get back to CrossFi's products, because the blockchain is far from the only product this company offers. Let's take a look at the slide. From the presentation, here we have a list of the available products. I'll briefly explain. We have XUp, which I call a yield protocol. It's still in its early version for now. There's also the XS protocol, which is an RWB service that lets us trade, buy, and sell all sorts of derivatives from the physical world, like gold and so on. It's basically already working pretty stably, and everything is in order there. We already covered X-File above, and we've also looked at it. But at this stage of development, what interests us most is the CrossFi application itself. This is a banking app. Crossfire lets you spend cryptocurrency just like regular money, which is the coolest part. Here, unlike most competitors, we have a fixed 2% fee on all transactions. So there are no weird fees for deposits. A pretty reasonable 2% for the convenience, simplicity, and the real pleasure of actually using crypto in everyday life. Wow, money. I've been using this app for approximately 3 months now, and throughout this period, my experience has been very positive and satisfying overall. The app consistently works smoothly and efficiently, without any glitches, bugs, or unexpected issues. This is what the user interface currently looks like. I took a few clear and detailed screenshots for you so you can see exactly how it appears on my device. Here, our balance is displayed prominently on the main screen, making it easy to check at a glance. There are 2 assets for payments, XFi coin or the USDC token on the CrossFi network. Cards, weekly spending, transactions. And at the bottom, you can also see the available tabs. Home wallet cards. Analytics and profile. This is what the transaction history looks like. Here's the merchant. Yes, what we purchased. How much XFi was deducted and what that is in dollar equivalent. In a recent update, a wallet was also integrated below, which you can also tap on. I should note that there is, specifically, an option in the CrossFi application. to use XFi in two ways. That is, a non-custodial way, meaning we keep the funds in our own wallet, like MetaMask, and don't hand them over to third parties. Or a custodial way, using the built-in wallet inside the app. So either we connect our own wallet here and immediately hold XFi through a smart contract, and they can be used as a means of payment. Or we can top up the wallet and also hold XFi through it, using them as a means of payment. Basically, it's up to you. There's no real difference. This is what a typical transaction looks like. Let's take a closer look at it. Here you see the merchant, the purchase, the date, the amount in dollars, and XY. Status. The exchange rate from dollars to the local currency. The XY rate is the market rate, and the dollar rate is 1-to-1. This is the currency at withdrawal, the amount in local currency. Both the dollar and the XY commission are 5 cents. And right away, it's important to mention here that all transactions go through the chain, meaning as soon as the transaction happens, we get what's called a blockchain receipt confirming that our transaction went through. This is a unique feature. I honestly haven't seen anything like it anywhere else yet. That's what makes CrossFi especially promising and groundbreaking in its niche. Now, let me explain where the 2% is built in. We can see that 5 cents out of $48 is definitely not 2%. The 2% is built in here. It's in the difference between the dollar to local currency exchange rate. For example, at the time of the transaction, the bank rate was about 380 to 1. So right here, these 8 Armenian drums are taken as a commission. That's more or less exactly where the 2% comes from. For the company to operate and make a profit, this is very important. This is what cross-application looks like. It's very convenient and a huge advantage for the company. This is the main product, which is currently the driving force for growth. We've looked at the blockchain, how it's structured, and we've reviewed the cutting-edge product. Now let's move on to the next section. This section is called Advantages and Disadvantages. We need to understand it, what stage the system is at, and in general, we can even assess its prospects at any given moment. So let's probably start with the weaknesses, the disadvantages, and gradually move on to the advantages. What I see as a challenge at this stage is the lack of market awareness. Basically, there isn't really any marketing right now, which is acceptable for the current stage of development, but still, some basic actions need to be taken consistently and systematically. In other words, X is not being developed in any way, which is a sign of a project that's, well, not below average, but I do see it as a certain drawback. There are already technologies available for developing Twitter, and of course, I mean X, not just boosting numbers artificially. And here, the team definitely needs to pay attention to this, because the audience on X is the most active. And we also understand that CrossFi is absent from the information space here. That is, posts on X and Telegram have a kind of mechanical format. There's no storytelling at all, and the message comes across pretty weakly. And that's why the market doesn't understand what this is about, what it's for, and that you can already use the product, that it's already convenient, and so on. Of course, there are some publications, but it's still not enough. There are also no AMAs or any moves to form a core community, because the community is the driving force behind any system. Right now, it's just not there. There are some small groups like our community, our delegates, active users, believers, and early adopters, those who see the potential, but there isn't really a mass following yet. Of course, it's already time to start gradually laying the groundwork because it will take time to develop these ideas. So what are the other drawbacks? We see that there are third-party developers involved, hackathons are being held, in other words, competitions to find great teams and sponsor them. But I don't think it's being done properly. These developers aren't being engaged by the team in a way that would motivate them to keep working on the network without some extra incentive. It's one thing to attract them, but it's another thing entirely to keep them around. So retention is really weak here right now. And there's no development culture. Of course, it's understandable since there aren't really any users here either. We'll come back to this a bit later. That's why there are no developers either. It all stems from one another. It's a chain reaction, basically. And I'll also point out that since the main consensus is built on deposits, there are validators. And validators aren't just the ones who process blocks, they're active participants in the network. It would be good to have some kind of communication, some decision-making centers, so that the network develops not just through the company's own efforts. They are validators. The company definitely needs to pay attention to this as well. And the conclusion is this. At the current stage, it's acceptable, but it's absolutely necessary to take these shortcomings I mentioned into account, because the first stage was about development and infrastructure, but now it's time to start telling people about yourself, growing your audience, attracting developers. Otherwise, it will. Overall, those are all the drawbacks, and I don't think there's anything too critical here. You just need to take targeted actions. Now, let's move on to the neutral factors. The first factor is the lack of external investment. What I mean is that CrossFi hasn't publicly raised any outside funding. There are no venture capital funds involved. And on one hand, that's both a plus and a minus. In other words, the company's growing organically and there's no outside pressure influencing its decisions. Basically, the founder, Alexander, has a blank check to do as he sees fit. So he can independently make decisions, test things out, and not really get distracted by any external factors. But at the same time, the lack of investment affects the company's development. There are no partnerships, and the audience isn't being properly informed. And essentially, for the current stage of the market, these outside investments, these labels, the attracted funds, they matter. But I can clearly feel and see that things are gradually changing, and the investments that have been raised do say something, but not much. I can name dozens of projects that raised millions of dollars but still didn't succeed. This lack of investment is both a plus and a minus. What are the risks, right? In other words, the lack of investment limits the pace of development. And of course, there's a lack of liquidity. We can see that the order books on the exchanges are pretty thin on both sides. So if an interested user comes in, they can't buy a decent amount, even just $10, $20, or $50,000 worth of XFi. In the long term, they also won't really be able to exit right away, and the price won't move. It's inconvenient and it limits the potential of XFi itself, as well as the company. And of course, liquidity in DeFi within the Crossfire internal system is also close to zero. I think this is also due to the lack of users and the lack of protocols. So at this stage, it's acceptable, but obviously, without liquidity, further development is out of the question. Here, it's noted that it's necessary to create a unified drive between all departments and all strategies. This is not an easy task, but everything is built around it. Here, I have a test to screenshot. And yeah, I had a partnership. It doesn't really tell us much, but there's some movement in that direction. So yeah, it's a strategic investment, but the amount isn't being disclosed. And nowhere in any monitoring do we see anything, no changes at all. Also, as a neutral factor, DeFi applications exist and are functioning, but there's no audience using them. Only the infrastructure is ready, which in principle is already a pretty good factor. And I also can't help but mention this rather peculiar pace of development. The team is moving at its own pace and is focusing more on internal technology rather than on any external factors. But still, we need to understand that the market in AppTree is very volatile, and a large number of competitors are constantly emerging, which is both good and bad, who in principle have the ability to pull part of the market share over to themselves. So it's definitely important to maintain a balance here. These are the neutral factors. And we understand that right now. Everything we have, Crossfire, is more aligned with traditional finance. That is, everything is in place. There are licenses, there are working products, but there is a lack of liquidity, a lack of brand recognition, and the basic Web3 principles of marketing and development are still being followed rather weakly. This is a neutral factor that also needs to be taken into account. Let's move on to the strengths. Let's start with the technical foundation. I've already described the blockchain, which allows for excellent scalability. It's a Cosmos EVM hybrid. And here, developers can quickly deploy services, protocols, and various solutions without any difficulties. So the users can easily come here. This is a big plus, the fact that there is EVM. So it's not some weird programming language, but something familiar that you see in EVM. It also mentions here the PCI DSS security certificate. This is more related to regulation, but still, it's a very serious standard. You can see all the numbers, all the necessary figures right in the app. Everything is licensed, which is very important. For a product like this, it's a serious advantage because this way the company attracts interest from major players. Banks, funds, institutional investors, and other people for whom this kind of licensing compliance is absolutely essential. All of this is extremely, extremely important. I also have to mention that there's XFi, which isn't just an ordinary coin that sits in your wallet, lying there waiting for its moment to be sold. At any moment, XFi is already liquid, real money that you can spend. This is an undeniable advantage that lets you look at this asset from different perspectives. Among other things, it's also about payments. Fees, blockchains, DeFi, collateral, credit, backing, and so on. RWA, synthetic derivatives, and so on. It's really cool that there are 4 halvings and a clear, predictable emission plan designed for 20 years. Right now, there are 18 years left. It's also important to note that there were no ICOs, fundraising, or sales, only MPX. MPX mines XI. We can understand how much XFi will be mined and over what period of time. This is very important, and that's how its emission becomes predictable. And users can also stake MPX, and in this way earn XFi, and I believe earn a decent amount in the foreseeable future. An important point to keep in mind is that when users spend XFi in the app, whether it is on purchases, services, or making payments, the XFi, which is the digital currency used within the application, is, under the hood, seamlessly converted into the local currency of the region and then sent as a payment to the recipient. At the same time, the company itself, or sometimes a partner organization, though I'm not entirely sure about the exact internal mechanics or the specific details of how this process works, continues to accumulate XFi in this manner. So, as a result, XFi is gradually, little by little, leaving the open market and being taken out of circulation. This is a very important point to understand, and I ask you to pay close attention to this aspect. It's a not so obvious factor because besides simply holding XFi, we also have a system in place for accumulating XFi through the app in certain specific scenarios. The bottom line is that XFi is real money, no exaggeration. Right now, at this very moment, it functions as actual currency. Let's take a look at the product system. At the user level, I've basically already described all the products here. This is the Crossfire app with real use cases for users, which is the coolest part. Users genuinely have the desire and need to pay attention to Xfile every day. Because we pay, and we understand that yes, this is Xfile. And that's really powerful. It's a huge advantage that the app works, it's convenient, it's useful, and it's easy to understand. And its use case is payments. That's what most people on our planet use. It's a huge audience. Not infinite, but it's a deep audience. This is the most straightforward use case for people. That's why here we see that Shadab and Tech My Money is a big advantage. As for the level of infrastructure, I want to highlight separately that the company has a technology that's already tailored for CrossFi. I call it the creative engine, meaning a kind of engine or AI that allows the team to instantly create various stylized visuals. These can be generated for tags, VK for different resources, social campaigns, and so on. So it looks very appealing. I've never seen anything like it anywhere else. And the image is also important. There are people everywhere here. That is, people of different nationalities, all kinds of people. This reinforces the image of a person as a user. So a tool like this will give the company the ability to launch all sorts of marketing campaigns without any obstacles. And in any case, right away, you can create some really cool visuals. Here, we also have cross-chain functionality, and of course, I can't forget to mention the compliance layer, that is, the regulatory layer. There's registration with 50 DSS, and the company also holds patents for proprietary technologies. I'll talk more about that later. It's a key aspect. In addition to technology, applications, and payments, there's a strong focus on how to protect all this and how to comply with regulators. It's one thing to create your own products, but it's another thing entirely to keep up with the current reality. Without this, development's impossible. The next section is about the team. I'll point out that since the launch of Crossfire, the founder and visionary has remained unchanged. Because it's one thing when a company grows and the founder might get tired and hand over the reins to hired managers. Probably, employees will never be able to see things the way the founder does. And here, the founder is always present, fully invested in this idea. Alexander Vasilyevich Sidakov. He sees where the system is headed, and that's a big plus. Because, for example, if I see that the CEO is changing, the founder is leaving, that already signals serious problems within the system. So here, that's also a big advantage. The development team has experience, technical expertise, and yes, there's no presence of funds, so there's no pressure on the market. And the network, to some extent, still belongs to the community and the validators, not to some narrow group or organizations that have their own interests. And I want to pause on this point and go into more detail. Basically, the system has things that can attract people's attention. It's a huge audience, certainly not infinite, but a remarkably deep and diverse one. This is the most straightforward use case for people. So here we see that the idea of shut up and take my money is in fact a significant advantage. In other words, making it as easy as possible for people to pay without unnecessary friction or barriers is a real benefit. On the infrastructure level, I want to highlight separately that there is a company, technology, which is already tailored for Crossfire. I called it the AI Creative Engine, meaning an AI engine that allows the team to instantly create various stylized visuals. These can be generated for Tagivka, for different resources, social campaigns, and so on. So this looks very appealing. I haven't seen anything like this anywhere else. And it's also important to note that there are people involved everywhere here. That is, people of different nationalities, different people. This reinforces the image of a person as a user. So this kind of tool will give the company the ability to effortlessly launch all sorts of marketing campaigns, and in any case, instantly create some cool visuals. We also have the Crossfire chain here. And of course, I can't do not specifically and explicitly mention the compliance layer, that is, the regulatory layer. There is PCI DSS registration, and the company also has patents and patented technologies. I'll talk about that later. This is a key aspect because in addition to the technology, the app, and payments, a lot of attention is paid to how to protect it and how to ensure compliance. With the regulator, it's one thing to create your own products, but it's another thing entirely to comply with the current reality. Without this, development is impossible. The next section is about the team. I want to note that since the launch of CrossFi, the founder and visionary has remained unchanged, because it's one thing when a company is run by its founder. He might get tired and hand over control to hired employees. Hired employees can never see things the way the founder does. And the founder is always present here. He's energized by this idea, Alexander Masidikov, and he sees where the system is heading. That's a big plus because, for example, if I see that the CEO is changing, the founder is leaving, it already signals difficulties, serious difficulties in the system. So here, that's also a big advantage. The development team here has technical experience. And yes, there are no funds involved here, so there's no pressure on the order book. And the network still, to some extent, belongs to the community and the validators rather than to some narrow organizations that have their own interests. And I'll pause on this point in more detail. In other words, the system has things that can attract people's attention. It's one thing to create products, cool blockchains, great services, beautiful websites, but it's another thing entirely. Without hype, without marketing, and without real value for people, it's just not interesting. Here, however, the project has something to attract people: payments. I believe that 99.9% of the current Web3 market has nothing like this. Many have to struggle to come up with different strategies to attract users, investing large amounts of money. Here, users come to the product and they stay. So it's a constant influx of audience. You just need to set it up to fine-tune this funnel. And after users realize that XFi is great, CrossFi is convenient, and as they get deeper into the system, they move into DeFi, they start buying XFi as collateral, and so on. So there's always something to keep attracting attention. And of course, the daily basis use case is really a gem. Let me explain. We all use some kind of digital products on a daily basis. It could be YouTube, various services, or messengers. And we constantly give a part of ourselves, a part of our attention, to these services. And CrossFi natively, that is naturally, integrates into our routine, our daily routine, and it manages to draw some of our attention to itself. When a payment goes through, we get a notification and see CrossFi, and that's a huge advantage, an undeniable advantage of the current system. That's why, for me, it's a real gem, because the longer I am in the market, the more I realize that the best product for people is the one we use ourselves, the one that interests us. Yes, for example, I'm interested in Tether, but for me, Tether is just a means of exchanging into fiat currency, and Bitcoin is more for storing value, while Ether is for DeFi. But it's hard to find anything else beyond that. And now we have XFi, which combines everything together. Both savings and payments without the need to exchange or withdraw anything. You can link it right away and pay instantly. That's unique. Moving on. This is a serious large-scale section. Regulatory maturity. We see that Crossfire is already ready to integrate with various institutions because there is a compliance team with a strong background, people who are preparing the system for compliance. This includes the MiCA license, a European license, and the MSO, which is a Hong Kong license. In other words, they are in the process. And as soon as these licenses are obtained, it essentially opens up the opportunity to develop and scale very seriously. Very few are actually focusing on Web3 regulation right now. That is, not just targeting crypto-anarchist users or users from other backgrounds, but specifically those who have significant capital and for whom security is important. PCI DSS was already mentioned. Also, interestingly, Crossfire owns patents for its technologies. You can take a look, pause the video, and see that all the main products are patented. And the copyright holder is the founder of Crossfire, Alexander. All key technologies are covered by these patents. This shows that everything here is built for the long term. Because without protection, it's also impossible to go public, attract investment, or engage with serious partners at a high level without regulatory compliance. So this is definitely a very significant advantage. And of course, I can't help but mention the sources of monetization. If there is a product, a protocol, or a service, it can provide an excellent offering. But if it doesn't generate revenue and business is done to make money, it can't develop and it dies. Here, there are clear sources of monetization for the company. I've already mentioned the commissions in the app. The company also has the opportunity to provide white label solutions to various organizations. Here's an excerpt from the presentation. Transaction fees. XFi, its utilities. Staking rewards, bridges between networks, in-network exchanges, and various institutional partnerships. In other words, CrossFi provides banking services for fintech businesses, Web3, subscriptions, commissions, and all sorts of transaction fees as well. So there are enough sources of monetization here for development and scaling, which is also a very, very significant advantage. In the end, we see that the model is already established. There is real technology, actual technology, which is rare. This means trust from partners and the market. The economy is predictable. XFi is mined over 18 years, which gives users confidence. There is a reason to hold on to XFi, not just use it as a means of payment, but also to keep it. And the team is strong, which ensures stable development. We see that the market is currently challenging, but the team continues to move forward regardless. These are the strengths of the current system. Now I'll move on to the final section. This is the prediction block, the forecasting section. Here I will highlight and summarize everything that has been said above. Right now we see that CrossFi has two branches of development. The first branch is traditional finance, which includes payments and Web2. Banks, integrations, various payment solutions. Here, the company has vast opportunities for growth, increasing the user base, higher earnings, scalability, and various business-to-business revenues. This is the traditional finance branch. Then there's the DeFi branch, which so far hasn't been developing as it should. This includes staking, farming, various trending services. So here we see real-world assets, the current trend, lending, which is also a very important element. There's staking of XFi itself, liquidity, and XFi as a means of payment. This is a major advantage both for companies and for users, who can profit from this in the long term. By working with XFi wisely, there are two branches, and I'll also talk about the flywheel. This is like a carousel, very relevant in the current market environment. It's a well-known, clear term where a network of elements reinforces each other. So here, DeFi and TradFi reinforce each other. What is the flywheel? It's when one thing reinforces another. A user does something and the system earns from it. The system shares its profits. These can be various incentives, rewards, staking, and so on. Users receive more. They develop a positive impression of the network. They do even more, and in this way, the carousel repeats. It keeps spinning constantly. TradFi, or traditional finance, reinforces DeFi. Regulation and compliance with modern financial institutions make it possible to attract significant amounts of capital from a broad range of investors, which increases trading volume and overall market activity. In turn, DeFi also strengthens TradFi. External players, such as institutional investors, can see how robust and resilient this system is, and they also become interested in investing their funds here to earn some yield or returns. Compliance also means trust from users and from the market. Without this, development is impossible. Of course, the system's income. Without it, life is also impossible. We see that CrossFi consists of two branches. TradeFi and DeFi complement each other. When one develops, so does the other, and the pathways for development are unique for each branch. This is already a certain kind of scaling. Here, I speculated a bit about what phases there might be. The transition phase, we understand that the infrastructure is now ready, and gradually, CrossFi will start entering the world. The network is already ready for development, and the protocols are in place. I would also like to point out that the current capitalization of CrossFi is incredibly, even anomalously low. The current capitalization is $10 million. Projects of a similar level on the market have a capitalization starting from 200, even 300 million. That's compared to the current one. With the current base, the technological stack, that is, with all the developments and all the licenses, I believe the undervaluation is anomalous, anomalously high undervaluation. The 10 million market cap is comparable to some kind of meme coin that has nothing behind it at all. As for Crossfire, since the market doesn't see it yet for a number of reasons, its potential is seriously underestimated by the market. That's the anomaly. And of course, one day a revaluation will happen, and then we'll never see a 10 million capitalization again. The short-term outlook is shown on the screen. This is a gradual increase in activity. Of course, we understand that liquidity is also needed here. Users will come for the liquidity. Developers will come for the users. Developers create protocols to strengthen the system. Again, this is that same carousel effect. Liquidity is very much needed right now. The medium-term horizon, that's about a year and a half. I see that the capitalization has the potential to grow by 50 to 80 times because the audience will gradually grow over time. And of course, in this way, XFi will be bought as a means of payment, as an investment for DeFi, and so on. This will naturally encourage more people to use XFi in different ways. The conclusion is that right now we are witnessing a unique phenomenon in the web market, where there is a company that is solving a real pain point for users is payments. The company provides the opportunity to pay with cryptocurrency seamlessly anywhere that accepts Visa cards. The terms are very decent. 2%. No deposit fees at all. Everything is clear, everything is convenient. A capitalization of 10 million is very low. I'm sure it won't stay that way for long. There is room for growth. There are sources for monetization. This is a serious factor because, I repeat, without earnings, the business dies. So there is a certain outlook here, and it is, of course, upward and undeniable. It is very important to grow the user base and give them opportunities to earn. This is already moving into the DeFi branch, liquidity, and so on. I've already mentioned this above. And with that, I will conclude my review. Here are the contacts for Digital Alchemist, our support team. If you have any questions, you can reach out there. I also invite users and anyone interested to join our Telegram channel. It's always interesting. As Digital Alchemist, we are committed to the long-term development and support of the cross-finance system because we are convinced that both users and validators influence the development of the network, and a lot depends on them. It's important to educate, inform, and enlighten users. This benefits the company, everyone who holds XFi, and the entire system as a whole. That's why I invite you to join us. Subscribe to the Digital Alchemist poll channel, write to CrossFi Keeper, and stay tuned for new videos. Have a great day. Thank you for your attention.